Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a comedic spin on all the goings-on in the world. My name is Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North every Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time, fresh for download to listen to at work on Wednesday morning for everyone the entire world around. Luckily, the snow has melted, if only briefly, but it's melted. So there is grass again, although there's no leaves on the tree. But the Great White North is not so white right now. We're going to get into whiteness in a little bit. But either way, this podcast comes to you completely ad-free each and every week. And all that I ask is you subscribe on any podcasting platform or over on YouTube and tell your friends about me either in person or with a share over on social media. Also, if you have a second, please rate us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts because it is a great help and it helps show up higher in search results and all that jazz. So you can do that on Apple Podcasts or really any platform that allows you to rate a podcast. I would love it if you could do so. A quick update. This is going to be my first little 10-minute episode for sure. As I said last week, I have an exam on Saturday that I need to study for. I know it's Tuesday, but I'm that guy. So it's going to be a short episode. It's my 40th episode as well, which is fucking awesome. Honestly, didn't think I would do this many, but here we are and we're still going strong. So 40 episodes in and yeah, loving it so far. So I wasn't going to miss this one, but it's also a really important one. So hopefully, as I mentioned last week, starting next week, my exams are, or I only have one exam to do, and it will be done, and I can really get back to writing for this podcast. But the reason I know this is a 10-minute episode is because I have it all written out. So, without any further ado, we're not even going to take a break. We are just going to jump right into it because this is a heavy topic. I decided to pull the story right from NHL.com. The Calgary Flames are investigating a claim that head coach Peters used a racial slur while coaching in the AHL, which for those of you who don't know, because I know I have a lot of listeners in the U.S. who definitely do not watch hockey, the AHL, or the American Hockey League, is the farm system for the NHL. So they are it's a full professional league, but they are underneath the NHL. And just up front, I'll also mention that I'm going to talk about the ECHL, which is a league, another professional hockey league that is below the AHL. So going from bottom to top, you have the ECHL, which is the East Coast Hockey League, which feeds into the AHL, which is the American Hockey League, which feeds into the NHL, which is, of course, the National Hockey League. Also, the American Hockey League has a ton of Canadian teams. Not really sure. It's more like the North American Hockey League, but that's all you need to know about hockey for the purpose of this entire podcast. And I will explain. I've run through this article already, but I'll explain if any real hockey terms come up or something. I'll explain what they mean because I'm assuming that there are people who do not care one iota about hockey. So, getting to the article from NHL.com, the NHL and the Calgary Flames are investigating a claim that current Calgary Flames coach Bill Peters used racial slurs in addressing a player earlier in his coaching career. Akim Aliu, a second-round pick, number 56 overall, of the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2007 NHL Draft, has alleged on Twitter Monday that he was repeatedly subjected to racial slurs during the 2009-2010 season. He didn't mention Peters by name. Aliu and Peters, however, were on the same Rockford team, Aliu as a player and Peters as a coach, in the AHL that season. It was Aliu's first professional season and Peters' third and final season with Rockford. The behavior, this is a quote from the NHL, the behavior that has been alleged is repugnant and unacceptable. We will have no further comment until we've had an opportunity to look into the matter more thoroughly. Peters was not on the ice for the Flames practice in Buffalo on Tuesday, which is today, but GM Brad Treliving, said that he had not been fired. Quote, throughout the evening last night and into this morning, we've begun an investigation into the incident. The purpose of me coming to you here today is that we have not completed that. We are trying to be as transparent as possible and to update you, Treliving said, who was, of course, the GM of Calgary. Assistant coach Jeff Ward is running our practice here today. Bill has remained at the hotel, and he has not been relieved of his duties. I've spoken to Bill, I've spoken to Akeem, I've spoken to a number of people. I'm not going to comment on any individual in terms of what they've said. I had a chance to speak with Bill last night, obviously, and again this morning. I spoke to Akeem last night and again today. I've spoken to some other players from that team. I've spoken to GM Stan Bowman with the Chicago Blackhawks organization. This type of allegation is wholesome. Now it's my job to find out exactly what's taken place, end quote. And again, that's from the general manager of the Calgary Flames, where the coach currently works. So Peters, who has been the Flames coach since the start of the 2018-2019 NHL season, did not address the media after the game yesterday. Peters also coached the Carolina Hurricanes for 4 seasons before moving to Calgary, and was an assistant coach for 3 seasons with the Detroit Red Wings after leaving Rockford. So, of course, some time has passed since this happened, and he's had a couple different jobs. Aliyu, the player involved, was born in Nigeria but played junior hockey in Canada. Said he was demoted after he, quote, rebelled against the use of the derogatory language. That's what he said on Twitter. He scored 17 points, 11 goals, and 6 assists in 48 games for Rockford in that 2009-2010 season before being demoted to Toledo in the ECHL. So that's a demoted league. He was traded on June 23rd in 2010 to the Atlanta Thrashers in the Dustin Byfuglien trade, for anyone who knows anything about hockey. If you don't, that doesn't matter to you at all. The Blackhawks also issued a statement on Tuesday regarding Aliyu's allegations and his demotion to the ECHL. I should also point out, I just mentioned the Atlanta Thrashers. They are now the Winnipeg Jets. For anyone who's more recently into hockey, the Atlanta Thrashers no longer exist, so he was traded to the Jets organization. Quote, the alleged actions by a former coach toward Akeem Aliyu while with the Rockford Ice Hogs are something we take seriously. The purported incident has not been reported or brought to our attention prior to yesterday and had no effect on any player personnel decision regarding Mr. Aliyu, end quote. And that is, again, from the Blackhawks organization. They own the team that was involved. The Rockford Ice Hogs are owned by the Chicago Blackhawks. The 30-year-old, who is now a free agent, had 3 points, 2 goals, and 1 assist in 7 NHL games, all with Calgary. So, some things to say just off the top of my head before I get into my script, which therefore makes my podcast longer than 10 minutes, because a lot of people joke that I always say it's going to be short, and it never is. Basically, his record shows that he probably shouldn't be a professional hockey player, not at the NHL level. He did well in the NHL. 3 points in 7 games is pretty good for someone who plays on the 4th line, but his records in the AHL and everything means he should probably be playing in the AHL or the ECHL. I don't think we're going to find that racism had anything to do with his failures, but it's important to note that last week, the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike Babcock, was fired. And since then, one big news story that he mistreated a rookie 3 years ago has come out, and this snowballed from that. So Aliyu, the player involved, initially tweeted about Mike Babcock being an asshole, and then kind of pivoted to the racial slurs and whatnot. So there's a big problem right now in hockey. A lot of reporters are saying that they have players approaching them and they're working on new stories. So we might have a lot of crazy stuff coming up, but something like this I just had to talk about. So let's get into what I wrote. That way I don't just ramble on forever. So racism has existed in sport forever, and it's no secret that hockey is the only sport whiter than the surface they skate on. Hockey is so white that bleach turns it yellow. Hockey is so white that Al Capone once tried to snort it. But seriously, we've had several incidents in recent years of racist remarks coming from fans around the game, from junior levels all the way up to fans being removed from an NHL game last year for using racial slurs to a player serving a penalty in the penalty box. The reason I chose to do this episode, a one-topic short episode, which I really wanted to do it just on this one thing, it's more for my self-reflection, because it's really hard for me to understand how we're still at this point in time, where the first reaction a white dude has when a black person does something they don't like is to use the N-word. And I'm not even talking about, like, yes, he's a coach who had power over this guy, but I'm just saying in general, like, black person does something I don't like, and the first thing I grab is the N-word. Why is it the last word, the last one of those words that lingers? Because no one uses chink or kike anymore. That's why I can say them out loud without people getting really pissed. Even Jew, as a derogatory slur, has left the general lexicon. Like, you hear it kind of once in a while, oh, like, you're a Jew, but it's fucking gross, and everyone's like, ugh. Yeah, it just doesn't work. But the N-word still lingers. It's still around. But really, to hear that a top-level coach in the league allegedly jumps right to that, and there's also been further reports today, which are unsubstantiated, that's why I'm not really covering them, about him being actually physical with other players, white players, and derogatory towards them, although no one else has come forward that he was racist. So a lot of reports that this guy was truly an asshole. Now, I'm truly perplexed. As a white dude, like, I really wish I could ask this guy what the fuck he was thinking. I've been mad at people before, but there are far better ways to make someone feel like shit than being racist. That just makes you the shitty person. It, like, makes them feel bad, but not even really, because no one feels bad when you point out the color of their skin, right? It's like if you walked up to a white person, you're like, hey, you're white. They'd be like, yep. Same thing with a black person. They'd be like, yeah, I've fucking noticed. So to use the N-word is literally like a negative way of pointing out that someone is black and saying that in some way, like, it makes them less than, but it just makes you the shitty person for saying it. That's it, right? So there's tons of ways that you can make fun of someone. You can talk about their shoes, hair, girlfriend, car, intelligence, or lack thereof, funny name, ugly face, laziness, shitty job, missing tooth. I mean, I can literally make fun of someone for a full 24 hours without being racist even once. It's fucking easy. Apparently not, but I find it easy. This is obviously a developing story, but I think it's important to remember that society isn't yet where we want it to be. And I use this podcast, to try and educate people about what's happening in the world while also bringing a bit of a humor to otherwise shitty situations. I think this is as good a time as any to just point out that all people, and I mean all people, deserve to have the same respect shown to them that you would expect shown to you. I'm not even being biblical about it. Like, I'm just saying, like, everyone deserves that, at least at first. If you get to know someone and they're an asshole, fine, you can be a cocksucker to that person. But if you use someone's race against them, all it shows to me is that you have very little creativity and you suck at telling jokes and making fun of people. Like, if that's what you jump to, if you're like, oh, you're a Jew, it's like, ha, yeah, okay. You're not even good at it. Like, why open your mouth, right? So maybe try not to be that guy moving forward and come up with something new. We white folk have used that word for like 300 years, literally. I like to think we can come up with something else to use against people. Besides, we've given them the best one yet, and you bet your ass they're going to use it against us in the near future. Because from now on, white people the world over can just be referred to as Trump's supporter. Thank you all for listening to this really short, now 15-minute episode, even though I said it would be 10. These discussions, I usually tell you to take them out to the real world, but instead of doing that, this week, first of all, share the podcast with your family and friends. It's a nice short episode that you can share with them, and they can power through it real quick to see if they like the power and the glory of the Laugh to Learn podcast. But just be nice to people this week. Be nice to someone. If you see someone being an asshole, be like, hey, you there. Don't be an asshole. And if you're being an asshole, then I just told you right now, hey, you there. Don't be an asshole. But none of my listeners are assholes. And if you're an asshole, you need to change, because you can't be my listener and an asshole. Those two things, they are mutually exclusive. You can't be both. So it's time to make a change, ladies and gentlemen. Make a change. As always, thank you very much. Subscribe on any podcasting app you happen to be using, and tell your friends about me. Until next time, when we will have a full episode. I know our time was short this week, but I implore you all to keep on laughing and keep on learning.